All right, team. So I'm here with Miss Amanda Simpson, who is the Vice President of Research and Technology for Airbus Americas, correct?
That's correct.
And this is an interview that we were offered by Airbus, and for PTUK, we absolutely took advantage of it to have somebody with such an accomplished personal and professional career. So thank you, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Orlando. It's my honor to talk with you all.
Yeah, and we are at Oshkosh, so we are surrounded by aviation, and it's just the most amazing show. So why don't we just start with your personal story? How did you get into aviation, and how did you end up here at Airbus?
Well, thanks. I've had incredible opportunities that I've pursued over my career, a long and storied career, I might add. When I started in college, I found out that one of our graduates had just been accepted by NASA to be a space shuttle astronaut. And to me, that was my ultimate goal, was to be an astronaut. And I thought, wow, if George could get there, I have to figure out how to do it, and I can just follow his path. And what he did in college was a scholarship program that took 4 students a year and taught them to fly as a practical application of the science and technology that we were exposed to in the classroom. So I knew I had to do that, and I did get into it my first year. And by the time I graduated, I was a commercial instrument-rated pilot, and it stuck. I mean, that was just, I found a passion. And over the course of my career, it's that blending of the technology and the aviation aerospace background that has propelled me. First job in aerospace was working on the prototype for the AH-64 Apache attack helicopter with Hughes Helicopter. Then I went to work for Douglas Aircraft Company doing customer service on DC-9s and DC-10s. Then I went to work for Hughes Aircraft Company, where I actually oversaw a vacuum tube production line. So you kind of have to joke, but probably not too many people even remember what vacuum tubes are. But these weren't the little ones that were in the back of your television set. These were big 50-pound up units that were the main source of energy for military radars, for airborne radars. I worked the F-14, the F-15 programs. And after 5 years running that, I got an opportunity to go back into the aviation department and become a flight test pilot for Hughes Aircraft at the time. The job was to direct our operations or direct our tests from on board the aircraft. So I was flying T-39s, Saberliners, a variety of different aircraft, and we were conducting tests. Not testing the aircraft, but conducting tests on systems, missiles, radars, and other things that we would mount on the aircraft and simulate their flights. And I did that for, I'll just say, a long time. Got to fly a lot of interesting aircraft, some military, a lot of civilian aircraft that we modified, and had a wonderful career doing that. One day, got a phone call from the White House asking if I would join the Obama administration, and I'm not one to say no to the President of the United States. So I packed up my bags and moved out to D.C., and after a short stint with the Department of Commerce doing export controls, I moved over to the Department of Defense. I did acquisitions for the Army for a couple of years, then I ran their energy department, and then the Secretary of Defense asked me to take over as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy. And so I had oversight of anything that was energy related within the United States military worldwide. So it was the fuel for all the jets and ships and tanks and trucks, but also batteries for dismounted soldiers and Marines, remote outposts. It was just fascinating. And I got to touch, anything in the military had an on-off switch was part of my purview. And of course, everything has an on-off switch. So I got involved with many, many programs. And like many things in government. When the administration changes, so do all the people. And I was shown the door. And after a little while of attempting a retirement, I decided I couldn't handle that right now, and decided to find a job. And here I am now at Airbus, and it's great. It's great. Airbus in the Americas is a little enclave of the bigger company. It is. We have all the different parts of Airbus. We have the commercial aircraft, we have helicopters, we have defense, we have space, we do air traffic control systems, we do, it's just all varied, and I'm trying to, well, I actually am pulling together all the technology and innovation we're doing across all these different opportunities, and it's really, and collaborating, of course, with our European counterparts.
One of my opportunities in my military career was to work in research and development up in Rome Labs.
Oh.
So, and I know one of my challenges going in there as somebody coming in from the field was to manage expectations. And we had young engineers that were super just motivated and wanted to change the world and come up with great technologies. But we had, one of our challenges was the government acquisitions process. So now, having done that, and now being at Airbus, what are some of the differences that you've seen in the ability to transition technology out to the industry?
Well, doing technology development inside commercial industry, which I did before I went to the government, and certainly now, is very different from what happens inside the government. It's a different acquisition process. Commercial aspects are more nimble, more agile, can respond to changes. It's actually easier to terminate something if it's not a good idea than in the government. But at the same time, it's also, there's so much to choose from. There's so many opportunities. It's finding those golden needles in that haystack that are worth pursuing. And here in the Americas, particularly in North America, there are such incredible opportunities. I mean, here we are at the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is full of innovators, people who are building one-off aircraft, who are coming up with ideas that no one's really tried before. And so tapping into that spirit is why I'm here this week.
So how do you capitalize? When you see something come across your desk or your office, and how do you capitalize on that innovation, and how do you pick a project that says this is something we're going to invest in? What sort of things are you looking for?
Well, so I have to look at it with the eye of what would this mean to Airbus, and it's I say, how do we make our products better, and how do we make better products? Because it's not just what we're building today, it's what we're going to be building tomorrow and how we build it. So it's the manufacturing process as well as the technology that's going to go into our next generation. And it could be anything. So sometimes it's, yeah, that could be something, or wow, that really could be something. But of course, as anything else, we have to coordinate it with all the different activities that are going on globally. So I try to find the best here in the Americas and compare it to what's the best going on elsewhere in the world.
And is there pretty frequent communication with Airbus Europe and Airbus Americas, or do they sort of let the American branch do its own thing? How is that related?
Oh, we're very interconnected. I'm on the phone with them weekly or emails. I seem to be in Europe many times a year to coordinate, because we are a global organization. We're not a separate part, and we have to be coordinated.
So from what I understand, Airbus has the major facilities, at least, are in Wichita and Mobile, correct?
On the commercial aircraft side, right. We certainly are. We're building helicopters in Columbus, Mississippi, as well as Grand Prairie, Texas. And just yesterday, we cut the ribbon on the OneWeb satellite facility at the Kennedy Space Center, where we're going to be building up to 2 satellites a day for the OneWeb low Earth orbit communication system. So there's a lot going on here in the U.S. So
as Airbus invests more and more in the U.S., what what are some of the things that are unique to Airbus? Because I know your manufacturing facilities in Mobile, at least, which I got a chance to see from afar once, were revolutionary. I mean, it was the way Airbus is manufacturing aircraft was just anything beyond the scope of what the average person understands, and it was nothing short of impressive. So how do you think Airbus is leading the way on those manufacturing processes and some of the amazing aircraft that, like the A350 and the A220?
So, of course, in Mobile, we're building the 320s, 321s, and soon the 220s. And I will tell you, the first time that I walked out on the floor of Mobile, I was looking around going, wow, it doesn't look like we're building aircraft very much differently than we were when I was at Douglas back in the late 70s. But then when you start digging into some of the processes, and there are some novel and unique capabilities. And one of the things we're looking at now is to try to bring in more robotics, more ways to assist our workers so that there's less rework, more precision, and that we can do things in a more efficient manner. So, right now in Mobile, we're pushing out about 5 airliners a month, which is pretty impressive, being that facility only opened several years ago. But we think within about a year and a half, there will be 12 aircraft coming out of that factory a month. So that's a huge increase. And to deal with that, we have to figure out how to do things more efficiently and more effectively and get more use out of our facilities and out of our employees.
And one of the other just great initiatives that I saw Airbus just recently in the news was with the A320 and partnering with Delta on the biofuels and sustainable fuels. So I saw that just recently, and it has to be the way of the future, isn't it? These sustainable fuels.
Well, certainly we're delivering aircraft from Mobile on the sustainable fuel. I mean, you saw that was I think the 50th aircraft delivered to Delta. And the sustainable fuels are important, and we have to work with, in that case, the fuel industry to help develop the supply for that on a global basis. But that's a near-term solution. We have some longer-term goals to really reduce the emissions and eventually eliminate them entirely. But that's going to be a challenge that we're looking at.
Yeah, I know. I was up in Friedrichshafen for Aero Expo, and on the general aviation side, Siemens and Magnus aircraft were really trying to get the electric aircraft out there and into the general population. Is that something that Airbus is looking at?
So we're partnered with Siemens on a program called the eFan X. Now, the eFan was an all-electric aircraft that made one of the first true electric crossings of the English Channel a few years back. The eFan X is taking a airliner. It's a BA-146, I believe, and replacing one of its 4 engines with a 2 megawatt electric motor. And we're going to find out, you think about that, 2 megawatts. That's an incredible amount of electricity and power that has to be controlled. So we're going to be starting to experiment. And that aircraft, we think, will be flying either later this year or early next year. And that's going to be a step forward to understanding how to do that on large aircraft. But meanwhile, if you were to go downstairs, here you'd see our Vahana aircraft, which of course is 100% electric. Its twin has done well over 100 flights now, and it's completely self-piloted, all electric, zero emission, and that's going to be what is required as urban air mobility becomes more of a demand in our transportation ecosystem.
Yeah, and that really is it. We do articles and stories almost weekly about either electric aircraft, the urban air mobility, and then in addition to that, what is the human's role in the loop, or on the loop, as we used to say, right? So where do you see? So we have a pilotless aircraft downstairs that is safe and has proven to be safe. Yeah. Do you see that technology perhaps going larger or wider into the industry, the aerospace industry?
Well, I think it has to. And, we're seeing it in a variety of fronts. You may be aware that the U.S. military is well on their way of developing the unmanned refueling aircraft. Energy, just in case you hadn't made the connection. Because it's going to be necessary for a variety of reasons. One, it can do the job better. You don't have to put all the
life support systems.
Exactly, the life support systems. But also, it reduces the demand for pilots, in that case with the United States Navy. And the demand for pilots is only going to be increasing. I heard some statistic that over the next 15 years, there's going to be a requirement for more pilots than have ever been certified in the history of aviation. And to keep up with that, we have to find new ways to be efficient with our flight crews. And that's going to be bringing more autonomy into the cockpit. I mean, let's think about it. When commercial aviation started, there were 5 people in the cockpit. And then there were 4, and then there were 3, and now we're down to 2. Is there going to be a next step? I think it has to happen.
Yeah. And one of the other great things that I saw Airbus working on was the bird of prey. So
isn't that cool?
It was probably the coolest thing I've ever seen in aviation. So biologically inspired engineering. It's an airplane that looks like a bird. Well, actually, you can tell me how you guys ended up with that concept.
Well, I was not part of that project. I mean, I heard about it about the same time that most of you did. It is inspired by the bird of prey. It has on the ends of its wings winglets that are individually controlled, like the flight feathers of a bird, and its tail is more like a soaring bird. So it's not something that we're going to build, but it is a concept that we're using to inspire and think about how the future of aviation is going to look like. Let's think outside the box. And what can we learn from nature that we can apply to our products?
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that was an engineer or a group of engineers that came up with an innovative idea, and I feel like we throw that around, innovation and just new ideas. How do we revolutionize an industry? And one of my goals in my career was to capitalize on the diversity of engineers and developers that we had, at least in the Department of Defense, and that included young engineers and more experienced engineers. So, how do you see that going? How do you capitalize on that new push for diversity in engineering?
I saw a study recently that polled young people and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And number 1 on the list was like YouTube blogger. Now nothing against you, Armando, but the bottom of the list was astronaut. And that's okay. I get that a blogger was not available when I was growing up, or even a concept, but it's the inspiration towards the aerospace community that we've lost, and so we need to rekindle that, particularly in the minorities, in women, bringing those people to the workforce that bring those diverse ideas. Because if we, I remember back in the 70s, all the guys were wearing white shirts with blue ties, and they all looked the same, and they all thought the same. And it's from those diverse groups that we get these unique and novel ideas and the acceptance to pursue them. So we got to continue to inspire people. And I'm telling you, this air venture is one of those where you walk around and you've got to be inspired. The creativity, the opportunities, and like you said, just the sound of the round engines flying by, remembering our history, but at the same time watching these high-tech jets fly around is pretty impressive.
How do you think what's the best way to get out there? So Air Ventures is a great example. How do we get aviation and aerospace engineering and all the associated engineering and STEM subjects? How do we get that out to the general public? What do we need to do different?
Well, I don't know if it's do something different, but it's do what we used to do, which was engage our youth. And I'm not an expert in that field, but it seems that we've gotten too rote in our education process rather than letting the imaginations drive what is unique to each student, and find out what inspire each of them. It's not going to be everybody. Aerospace engineering isn't for everyone. Being a pilot isn't for everyone. But I bet there's a lot more people out there that would be interested in it and should be pursuing it.
So if we had a high school senior sitting here with us right now, what advice would you give them on entering, if they were already interested in entering the industry?
Go for it.
Yeah.
I think so many people think that it's about pursuing the monetary returns, but it's not. It's about finding what brings you pleasure, happiness, and a feeling of contribution and commitment to society. I mean, I can look to the skies and say, I'm part of that. I helped bring that about. I'm helping move millions of people around the planet each year. I'm helping from my past make sure that we are secure and in our defense. And that means more to me than having a big bank account. Even though I'd like that airplane again.
Yeah, and there's a lot of airplanes for sale out there. I'm honored to be here sitting with you. Just super grateful that we got the opportunity to chat with you, and I look forward to seeing what Airbus comes up with in the next couple of years.
It's going to be pretty impressive. We got some really interesting things we're pursuing.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.